Hello, everybody. Charles from GMAT Ninja here. Welcome to our GMAT Focus Quant Starter Kit, episode number 4, presumably of 4. So our goal with this series, if you haven't watched the first 3, we are aiming this for people who are struggling a little bit with quant. Maybe you're scoring in the 70s, maybe in the high 60s, something like that, low 80s, maybe. And you're just trying to get your score better. You're scoring somewhere around average right now. So I'm not going to melt your face with super hard stuff today. We're going to focus on ratios and percentages. It's going to be a lot that I'm going to try to cram into this hour just to give you the foundations mechanically, but also get you in the right mindset, get you nice and flexible, get you really, really skilled at doing the basic translations you're going to need. Also some more advanced translations, and then taking some of the concepts, twisting them up a little bit, and can you recognize them once we start to paint them green and turn them inside out. Today is Valentine's Day. We are filming this live. Anybody who's here live, I really, really appreciate it. I would make kissy faces at you, but that would be really, really creepy. But thank you so much for joining us live, Valentine's Day. As always, no snack breaks, no editing. So any mistakes I make will be on the internet forever. Enjoy every bit of them. All right. If you are watching live, please, I thrive off your participation. So as we get into the meat of the questions here, I'm going to keep begging you guys to toss your answers into the chat. So please do that. Definitely helps us make the content better. And also, any questions you guys have, feel free to fire away. As long as it's more or less on topic, I will do my best to address it. And I'm going to try my very, very best to keep this under an hour today. And again, it's a lot to cover. Ratios and percentages, two of my very favorite topics, because I especially on the GMAT Focus, you're going to see a ton of them both on the quant section and on the data insights section as well. They love to play with them, love to kind of give you conceptual ways of looking at them, disguising them really well. And the two overlap a little bit. So really excited to get in the meat of this stuff with you guys. As always in these videos, since ratios and percentages are something that appear frequently in data sufficiency questions, we're going to do some data sufficiency here as well, even though that's on the data insights section. As always, if you enjoy this video, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Helps other people find the video. And just so you're aware of what I'm going to do today. So we're going to go through five kind of GMAT-like questions, not including the ones I got on the board right now. First two are going to be pretty mechanical, get you into the basics, and the last 3 are going to be word problems that get you deeper into the concepts, try to get you thinking right. And speaking of right, thank you, Cody Wright. Yeah, no Valentine's for the weary. I might be divorced by the end of this. Okay. Percent. So what I want to do here, so even if you look at these questions and go, hey, Ninja dude, these are pretty easy. I want you to bear with me, because I'm going to take you through a couple of really basic questions, actually 3 of them, one's not on the board yet, to kind of get you into the mindset of what is the GMAT really asking you to do with percents? What kind of skills do you really need? What kind of tweaks can they throw at you? So you might be looking at these going, oh, well, these are easy. This is stupid. Yeah, if you struggle at all on this stuff, again, if you're scoring anywhere within 20, 30 percentile points of average on the quant section, bear with me here, because this is going to help set you up for success on the rest of the questions we're going to do and on ratio and percentage questions in general. And again, if you're already scoring 82, 85 or above, this video is probably not for you. You might find it a little bit too basic. Maybe the last couple of questions will help you a bit. But again, this is meant for folks who struggle a little bit, average, a little bit above, a little bit below. Real basics here to start with. When they give you something like this, 30 is what percent of 120? One of the really, really basic skills, absolutely crucial on GMAT Quant, data insights to a lesser degree, but it's there, is when they give you something that can be translated word for word, they're giving you a gift. Please take that gift, run with it. Really good case of it here. And I deliberately use numbers here that are super easy. I'm betting that almost everybody watching is going, well, that's stupid. 30, of course, 30 is 25% of 120. Yeah, okay, let's do it really formally for a second, because then once I start messing with the numbers and making them less intuitive, that tool of translation is going to be your friend. So we can take this and go word for word. 30, what's the word is mean? That's just an equal sign. 30 equals what percent? Well, that what is asking for some sort of variable. I don't care what you use, W, X, whatever. I'm going to go ahead and use X here. Percent, what does percent mean? Literally a word with Latin roots, out of 100. So X out of 100 means you divide by 100. The word of just means multiply. So if I say 1/2 of 100, for example, you're taking 1/2 times 100, getting 50. So of is multiplication, and we multiply by 120 from there. Obviously, super, super easy. We can cancel. We're going to get a 6 here and a 5 here. So X is going to be equal to 30. Just going to multiply by the reciprocal, 5, 6. And I know you're looking at this and going, well, that's an awful lot of work to say 25. And Slap a percent sign on there. We knew that when we rolled out of bed this morning. 30, of course, is 25% of 120. Okay, so why do all this crap? The reason is that one of the GMAT's favorite things to start throwing at you is more complex versions where they take away the obvious answer, they take away the intuition. Even if I just make a really, really small tweak here, and I just add a couple zeros and go, X is what percent of 12,000? Yeah, now this gets messy. You can't just, you probably, again, if you're really, really skilled, good for you. But for most people, you can't just look at this and go, hey, I know what that is. The numbers start to get a little bit too opaque. You know it's going to be some sort of percentage that is less than 1%. So you can do the same exact thing. I'm not going to go through all of it. And what you're going to get here is close to this, but it's going to be 0.25% instead once you do all the math out. Okay, fantastic. Now, if you're taking this tool of translation, we can start tweaking this in all sorts of ways. What if I say y is what percent of b? What does that mean? What's y? What's b? I don't know, but I know I can just punch them in here and it's still going to work just fine. So tool number one on percents, you're going to see this all over the place. If they give you that opportunity to translate, do it. Every word in a problem like this is going to lead you to some nice little clean symbol that you can stick into an equation. Okay, hold on to that. We're going to play with that a little bit in some of the questions today. It's not the only important tool on percents, but it's one of them that I want you thinking about. Okay, that's part one. Part two, let's talk about ratios for a minute. To be fair, GMAT percentages, a lot more variety in the questions, tons and tons of different things they can do to you. Fewer varieties on ratios, but they can still do some funky stuff. We're going to play with the basics here in a second. Backing up a step more. So if we talk about translation of ratios, we could say something like the ratio of X to Y is 3 to 7. And very, very basic, so I want everybody here to have. You should be able to take this, translate it to a nice, pretty little equation too. You can think of a ratio as a fraction. So a lot of people will say, we'll use colons here. That's what we often do in real life. X colon Y is equal to 3 colon 7. There's nothing I can do to manipulate that. That's no fun. Better, you can write it as a fraction. A ratio is just a fraction. That's all it is. So the ratio of X to Y equals 3 over 7. Again, very, very basic skill. If you've never seen that before, it's something you're going to use a bunch on the GMAT. Okay, let's get into something that cuts more to the heart of what you're actually going to see. You're going to see plenty of this rolled into questions. You might see a question that looks just like this, not a hard question. But let's say we've got a ratio of pink to red to white candies. It is Valentine's Day. Both of my kids brought home piles and piles of candies and toys from school, all their little Valentines from all their little sweethearts. All right, the ratio is 2 to 5 to 8. If there's 72 white candies, how many are red? What I'm looking for here, tons of different ways to do something like this. A lot of you can kind of look at it and sort of intuit that maybe the number 9 is important. And then you kind of go, oh, 9 times 5, and you get 45. And maybe you don't know why you got that. I just want to really talk about what is a ratio really? Okay, obviously we're not saying that there are 2 pink and 5 red and 8 white candies. We're saying that that can be scaled up in some amount. Maybe it's 4 and 10 and 16, multiplied everything by 2. Maybe it's 6 and 15 and 24. I've multiplied everything by 3. Intuitive enough. But what I want you to think about here is, what is a ratio really? There's only one mystery. There's only one variable. And that is, what am I multiplying these things by? Imagine that we have all these little packages of candy. Every package contains 2 pink, 5 red, 8 white. The only mystery is, how many of those packages do we have? That's all a ratio is. There's only ever really one variable in a ratio question. And that variable, that unknown, is how much am I multiplying everything by to scale it up or down? That's it. So you could think of 2x, that's your actual number of pink candies that we have. 5x, your actual number of red candies. 8x, the actual number of white candies. If you can think of ratios in this way, I can give you the hardest ratio questions that the GMAT has to offer, and they're going to be pretty easy for you. Again, not saying that you always are going to need that little multiplier, but boy, does it come in handy. It's going to streamline a lot of questions. You don't have to be fantastic at math if you can grasp this one concept, put it into practice. Most ratio questions are going to be really straightforward to you. Okay, with this, we know that there are 72 white candies. So 8x must be equal to 72, that little multiplier there. So my multiplier must be 9. So how many are red? 9 times 5. That's going to give me 45. Is it red candies? Yes. Red candies, 9 times 5 is going to give me 45. And that's it. Nice and simple. Okay. That's it for the basics for now. So things I want you to hold on to: percent questions. If they give you the opportunity for a clean translation, take it. Ratios, same thing. They give you that opportunity, take it. And kind of more conceptually, what is a ratio? There's only ever one unknown. You shouldn't ever have to use more than one variable in a ratio question, typically on the GMAT. All right, with that, let's hop in our first question. I'm going to go through 5 today. Again, first 2 are not quite warm-up questions, but fairly mechanical. If you've got these foundations down, you're not going to struggle too much on the first 2. Last 3 are going to get a little bit tougher. Word problems a little bit more conceptual. And all right, if you are watching this live, please, as soon as you get an answer to this question or have a thought about it, your head's starting to hurt, you're starting to hate me, throw candy, throw flowers at the screen, either in anger or joy, whatever it might be, please let us know. Again, helps us make the content better. Going to take a couple minutes. All right, if you're not watching live, you need another minute, hit that pause button as always. Okay, again, nice straightforward translation question. If you've either have these skills already or paying attention to what I said in the first 5-10 minutes of the video, should be fairly easy for you, even though it doesn't feel great. I think a lot of people read this and kind of go, yuck. 4a is equal to p% of 3b. Feels opaque. I have no idea what this means. It doesn't mean anything to me, but hey, I can go word for word, turn this into a nice little pretty piece of algebra. 4a is equal to, that's an equal sign, p%. Again, percent's always out of 100 of 3b times 3b. What's the question asking for? Ratio of a to b. Again, we just want a over b. That's it. Very, very common feature of GMAT algebra, regardless of whether we're in a percent question or something else, is they're going to ask you not to solve for x, not to solve for a single variable, but something a little bit more complicated, a plus b, a over b, something like that, where it's a compound thing. Not too bad here. So all we really need to do is divide by b from both sides. Divide both sides by b. I said that awkwardly. So if we do that, we get 4a over b on the left side. The b goes away from the right side. So we have 3p over 100. Now all I need is to get rid of this 4, divide both sides by 4, or if you prefer, multiply by 1 over 4, whatever works better for you. If it looks better to your eyes to multiply by 1 over 4 here, that's great. And we get our a over b is equal to 3p over 100 times 4, so 400. And our answer is A, nice and straightforward. Okay, got one more kind of mechanical-ish warm-up question for you guys. Before I get there, I had a question that popped up. And again, as always, apologies for mispronunciations. Jubin, how easy is it to increase by even 1 point on new section of the GMAT focus? It's a really good question. I think that the best answer to it is that 1 point is not a ton on the GMAT focus on a section. Each section, Quant Verbal Data Insights, it's on a scale from 60 to 90. So what does 1 point mean? It depends on where on the scale that is, but it's not a ton. And what you'll find is that if you're taking the test, you could take the test 5 times in a row, perform exactly the same way, and you'll see at least 1 point of variability from day to day. So 1 point isn't very much. If you're looking for something more like 3 to 5 points, how hard is it? It just depends on what that means. If somebody's starting at let's say a 75 wants to go to an 80 on GMAT Quant, and I suspect that that's probably in the right ballpark for a lot of people watching a starter kit video, going from 75 to 80. That's the sort of thing where it depends on what's holding you back. That could be a fairly straightforward thing of building your foundations. It could be something more complicated where you're having performance issues. But I would say 1 point isn't a terribly hard thing to gain. As you get to 3 points, 5 points, that starts to become quite a bit tougher. And again, very rare that 1 point is going to be the difference between getting into your target business school and not getting into your business school. So I hope that helps a little bit. All right. And Sam, thank you so much for the kind words. Really, really appreciate this. Once again. All right. Now I'm going to torture you with some more questions. Have at it. And again, apologies for the nagging, but if you're watching live, as soon as you have a thought here, as soon as you have an answer, punch it in. Or if you're struggling, let us know that too. All right, as always, if you need a little more time, hit that pause button. Okay, before I jump into this question, again, fairly mechanical, but there's a lot of different ways to go about it and want to kind of highlight the most efficient ways to do it. Super important on the GMAT. If you've watched the rest of the starter kit, really harp on that, especially with the arithmetic. Before we get there, Andrew, great to see you again. Good question. I don't have the concordance tables in front of me right now, but a couple different ways to think about this. I don't want to get too philosophical. Quant score of 80 on the GMAT focus, if I'm not mistaken, is just above the median. So it's somewhere between the 50th and 60th percentile, if memory serves. On the old GMAT, that was something like a mid 40s score. So roughly speaking, and again, we can look it up in more detail later, but a quant score of 80 on the GMAT focus is roughly equivalent to landing in the mid 40s on the old test. I'm in the right ballpark. And thank you for that. Conversion tables are there. Now, that said, in terms of admissions, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately with this kind of question of, hey, what does it really mean to get an 80 on the GMAT Focus? 90 is a perfect score. 80 is above the median. It's a nice round number. I'm not convinced that admissions committees are always going to understand the difference between an 81 and an 83. Really? What does that mean? How much does that matter? So I think 80 is going to be a really key threshold, which I imagine, Andrew, is part of why you're asking about it. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit above average. It's not going to be hugely above average. It's not a super, super tough score to get, but I think it's a really key threshold to get, because I think that's where schools might kind of say, all right, I guess this person is okay on math. Again, that's going to depend on the program, but my hunch is that we're going to see that as a fairly key threshold in admissions as time goes on. All right. Really interesting in the live group, and this is typical, and apologies, I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I love it when you guys give me wrong answers when you're watching this live, because it just helps me to understand what kinds of mistakes people are walking into. So first few folks made mistakes on this, so much so that I was looking at it and going, wait a minute, do I have the wrong answer in my head? So super critical. Adaptive tests like the GMAT, take a breath. Those careless errors absolutely clobber you. It's not by design. It's just a reality. They're trying to find the level of question at which you get roughly half right, half wrong. You miss easy questions, the algorithm's going to go, you don't know what you're doing here. You only get 21 quant questions to prove yourself. Miss all the hard ones you want. That's no problem. Don't miss the easy ones. Whatever is easy for you, watch your back, be really careful. Really good case of it. Part of why I wanted to do this question, one of them is that I think it really cuts to the heart, again, of what you need to focus on as you're doing these questions in general, percent questions on the GMAT. It's also because we saw a lot of people, we published a little mini quiz before we did the live recording here. We saw a lot of people making a very careless error here. All right, with that, we've got some price. It's going down by 20%, and then it's going down by 40%. Now, one way you could do this, I think it's inefficient, especially as we do a slightly more complicated version of this, is you could pretend that the original price was $100, let's say, and it goes down by $20, and now you have $80, and then you take 40% of that, and 40% of 80 is 32. So I subtract 32 and I get 40. You could do that. It works out okay here. The numbers are fine. I think there's a better way that's going to be more resilient as the questions get a little bit more complicated. So that's okay. If that's what you did, that's totally cool. But you're doing a bunch of steps. You're calculating a percentage, doing a step of subtraction, calculating another one, doing more subtraction. It's okay. It'll get you to the right place. It's not quite what you want. So that's one way to do it. What I would prefer to do here, so something going down by 20%, I like to think of it as a multiplier. So if you use, let's say, Excel or spreadsheets of some sort in your day-to-day work, if something goes down by 20%, what are you going to punch in there? Well, you're going to multiply by 0.8. If you go down by 40%, what are you going to punch in? Well, you're going to multiply by 0.6 if something goes down by 40%. Okay, you multiply those two together, you get 0.48. And your answer is not A. Because if you multiply something by 0.48, what are you really doing? It's going down by 52%. So the discount here would be 52%. If that idea is unfamiliar to you, if it helps a little bit, you could stick a variable in there if it helps you think of it. It's certainly not necessary, but you could say, okay, imagine that the original price is P. And so you're taking P times this and you end up with this. So your original price versus the original price was P, you end up at 0.48P. You've gone down by 0.52. There's your percent change. So again, if it helps you to think about it with that P there, knock yourself out. Ideally, we hope you don't need that. Okay. With that, the reason why I'm such a stickler, I love these multipliers. GMAT writes a ton of questions where they come in handy. Why is it so important? Imagine that I make this a little more complicated. And now we've got some asset and it's going down 20%, going down 40%. Then let's say it goes up by 25%, and then it goes up again by 25%. If you're trying to do this by getting the percent change, subtracting it, getting another percent change, subtracting it, getting this one, adding it, getting that one, adding it, tons of work. You've given yourself 8 steps, more little arithmetic steps, more chances of making mistakes. Adaptive tests, that can really hurt you, cost you time. Also gives you opportunities to make careless mistakes. We prefer to streamline it. So you could say, well, if I go up by 25%, I'm multiplying by 1.25. Okay, now once again, GMAT's all about options. So they don't call the section math. They call it quantitative reasoning. Why is that? Typical question. They're going to give you half a dozen solution paths on a typical mid-level question, 75, 80 level question on GMAT Focus. And the question is, can you find one of the more efficient paths? They're going to reward you if you can. So what are we talking about here? Well, you could just multiply out a crap load of decimals. Is that going to be good for you? Maybe not. But what about using fractions instead? One of the themes we brought up in the arithmetic video number 3 in the starter kit series. Well, 0.8 as a fraction is 4/5. 0.6 as a fraction is 3/5. 1.25, well, if we go up by a quarter, we've got 5 quarters. 1.25 is 5 quarters, 5/4. And then we'll do it again. And guess what happens? A whole bunch of stuff cancels out. So our 4s are gone. These 5s are gone. These 5s are gone. We're just left with 3/4. So we're left with 3/4. Again, if you want that P in there times the original price, we've just gone down by 25%. 4 changes, and it's a really simple one in the end. Bottom line here, you've got these percent changes. One of the tools I want you to have in your pocket. Think about it as a multiplier. Something goes down by some percentage. What do I multiply by? If you can start to think this way and be really enterprising about what's going to work best on a given question, is it going to be decimals or percents? That's going to get you a really long ways on these questions, help you streamline your time. A lot of the percent questions, they're not necessarily so hard to get right. It's that some of them have solution paths that can really hang you for 3 minutes, 4 minutes if you're not careful about picking a really good path. So it's not just about can you get the answer, it's can you get there as efficiently as possible. A lot of the questions are written that way. So just keep it, if this is new to you, I want you to keep that in the front of your head as you practice percent questions. It'll save you a bunch of time in the long run. Okay. Okay, last 3 questions in the video. We're going to make these a little more conceptual. This one's a nice word problem, still somewhat mechanical. It's about as hard as a ratio question will typically get on the GMAT Quant section. You could see something a little tougher, but I wouldn't expect anything a whole lot nastier than this. If you can get this right, you're in really, really good shape on ratios. All right, if you're watching this live, keep those answers coming. Love to see what you guys are thinking. If you are not watching live, need some more time, hit the pause button if you need it. Okay. Durian, if you're not familiar, it's banned in a lot of places. So Singapore, every hotel has a little sign that says no durian because it smells terrible. Tastes really good though. If you're a Western and never had it, I'd start with a milkshake first. Anyway, original ratio of mango to durian was 3-8. 3 mangoes were removed, 2 durian were added. New ratio is 1-3. How many durian were there originally? Okay, bunch of different ways to do this. As always, very typical GMAT that way. You could do it with 2 variables if you wanted to. There's a way to get 2 equations, 2 variables. That is totally fine if that's what you're doing. Sometimes you can just kind of play with the numbers and get somewhere. I don't recommend that just because it takes so long, but it's not a bad way to kind of learn your way around ratios. If that's what you're doing, we're kind of messing around and going, well, maybe I have 3 and 8 to start. Does that work? Maybe I have 6 and 16 to start. Maybe it's 9 mangoes and 24 durian. That's rough, but you're going to learn something along the way if that's what you're doing. Fair enough. I'd argue here that if you're really thinking about what a ratio is and you're thinking about that idea of a multiplier, again, only one unknown in a ratio question, you can really streamline this thing. And Aurelia in the live group, spot on. Really appreciate that. Nailed it there. Okay, so we got this ratio of mango to durian. It's 3-8. Yeah, okay. But what does that really mean? It means that you can put your little multiplier in here, whatever variable you want to use. I'll be lazy and use X. So we don't have 3 mangoes necessarily. We have 3x mangoes. This is your actual number of mangoes. Sounds silly, but it helps. This is your actual number of durian to start with. And that's what the question's asking you for. So we just want to know, hey, what's 8x? Okay, well, now what can I do with this? Set it up as a little fraction. What's your mango to durian? Again, 3x mango is what you're starting with. 8x durian is what you're starting with. We subtract 3 mangoes from the top. We add 2 durian to the bottom. And now we get a nice little ratio of 1-3. Hey, we're almost done there. All we got to do is cross multiply 3 times this thing. 8x plus 2 over on the other side. We get 9x minus 9 equals 8x plus 2. I'm going to add the 9 on both sides and subtract the 8x, and we just get that x is 11. So what's 8x? 8x is equal to 8 times 11, and we started with 88. Delicious, fragrant. It's the Valentine's fruit. Smells magnificent. And your final answer is 88. Okay. And again, if you struggled a bit with that, no shame in that at all. This is about as hard, again, about as hard as ratio questions get. I wouldn't argue that it's like, oh, this is the hardest thing on the GMAT period, but it's really tough for them to come up with ratio questions that are too far beyond this. I'm not saying they don't exist, but they're exceedingly rare. If you can handle this and you're comfortable with kind of the concept underneath it, you're in really good shape on ratios. Okay. Last 2 questions we're going to do, both data sufficiency. And again, getting a little bit more conceptual, a little bit less mechanical. We'll see how tough you guys find this. Again, live group, let me know what you're thinking. If you're struggling, let us know. Toss in an emoji, curse at me, whatever works for you. Throw popcorn, whatever blows your hair back. All right, if you need more time, hit that pause button. Live group, keep lobbing stuff at me. I want to see what you guys are thinking, because it's been really interesting so far. Okay. So Emiliana paid a total of $77, including the price item plus sales tax. We want to know is the sales tax rate less than 10%. Huge key to data sufficiency. I always want you to do everything humanly possible with the question itself before you jump into the statements. Sometimes if you jump straight into these statements, you're going to get yourself in trouble, waste a whole bunch of time. Again, design feature of the test. Why? I still have no idea after all these years, but they will reward you if you spend a little bit of extra time on the question, try to rewrite the question in ways that are logically equivalent. Huge thing. If you've not worked on data sufficiency before, again, it's part of the data insight section on the GMAT Focus. We have a video here at GMAT Club, data insight series. There's a data sufficiency specific video where we talk about that process. Also have plenty of similar things over on the GMAT Ninja channel. So I'm going to assume that you've seen these before. I'm not going to talk about my overall process here, and just dive into the content of this question itself. All right. Our question is, we want to know, is the tax rate less than 10%? Now, what can I do with this question? I've got this total price here, including the sales tax of $77. And I want to know, is the tax rate less than 10%? Again, I've done a really nice thing here. I've been gentle. I made the numbers nice and intuitive, nice round numbers, nothing hard. That's not always what they're going to do on data sufficiency. Sometimes they're going to give you numbers that don't work out very nicely. And it's not because they want to give you a crap load of arithmetic. That's not the point. It's just to make it a little bit less obvious. Here, again, I was a little bit gentle. Starter kit videos, right? Now, to get my head around this, I'm going to start to go, all right, what is this thing here? So that's $77. Well, that's the price paid plus the tax amount, right? I'll say T for the tax amount. Okay. Well, fine, but what is it really? Like, what do you really do if you're paying a sales tax on something? What you're really doing is you're saying, I'm going to take that price and there's some multiplier there, right? So for example, if it is a 3% tax, then you take that original price of the item, you multiply it by 1.03. So same thing we were doing earlier, think about those multipliers. What if it's a 20% tax? Well, it's going to be 1.2. In this case, well, it's a 10% tax, or we're interested in finding out whether it's greater or less than 10%. So it's 1.1. Let's play with that for a moment. So if 77, let's pretend that this is equal, just to get our heads around what our benchmark is here. So the original price times 1.1 would give us $77. I can just divide out by 1.1. So P is equal to 77 divided by 1.1. Now, small thing, again, if you struggle with some of this arithmetic, there's always almost always a way around the worst of it on the GMAT. It's part of the design of the test. If you don't like dividing by decimals, that's fine. You don't have to. You can just multiply top and bottom by 10 if you want to. Again, if you like dividing by decimals, no problem. If you don't, no worries. I'm just going to do that instead. So I get that the price is 70. Okay, let's think about that a little bit. If the tax rate's 10%, the original price is 70, the tax is going to be $7. Now, time to translate this question, because that's what we're going after. How many different ways can I rewrite this question so that it's logically equivalent to the original? The more ways I can do that on a data sufficiency question, the better off I'm going to be. Higher my chances of not only getting it right, but saving myself a ton of time. So question is the tax rate less than 10%? Equivalent question, is the tax amount less than $7? Okay, we can even translate that into the price, the original price. So is the tax amount less than $7? That's the same thing as saying, is that pre-tax price greater than 70? And again, take a moment. If that seems weird to flip that sign around, think about it for a moment. If the tax paid is more than 7, that means your original price must be less than 70 to get us to that total of 77. All right. I think that's it. I don't think we can do anything else here. Let's go ahead and launch in. So I always write my little ADBCE. Again, if you're not familiar, we go through that in the data sufficiency specific videos. Sales tax was less than $7.70. Okay, the question is that sales tax amount less than 7? If it's less than $7.70, could be less than 7, could be $1, in which case the answer would be yes. It could be $7.69, in which case the answer is no. So this is not sufficient. We don't know whether that tax amount is less than 7. So it can't be A, can't be D. I'm going to cross those two out. Now notice here, the reason I picked on this, we had a question in the for the live group. If you registered for the session, we had a question in that quiz that was a very similar thing, but in problem solving form. A lot of people look at this and go, well, hey, if it's a 10% sales tax and the total paid is $77, the sales tax must be $7.70. Not correct. It's not 10% of that total. It's 10% of the original price. Really watch your back on that. That's why we set it up this way originally. So you're taking that original price, multiplying it by that multiplier 1 plus the tax percentage to get that total price. You're not taking 10% of that final price that already includes the tax. Okay, so A and D are out. Pre-tax price was less than $70. Yep. If you did your work ahead of time, if you did this process, write out the question as many ways as you can, this is sufficient, should jump right out at you. And our answer here is B. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Live group got awfully quiet. Cody here, smart guy, trying to back solve for mango still on the previous question. Mangoes are delicious. Okay, last question, a little more conceptual. Shouldn't be doing a ton of math here. It should be more of a thinking process that's very, very GMAT. If you find yourself doing a ton of arithmetic, you might be barking up the wrong tree. Okay, enjoy. Happy Valentine's Day. All right, if you need a little more time, hit that pause button. For everybody else, we'll jump into this in a second. Live group, if you're still working on this, keep firing your answers in there. Keep firing your thoughts in there. Super, super helpful. Seeing kind of two distinct groups, and it's interesting to see. Before we get there, and again, as always, apologies for mispronunciations. Manasvi, we'll be doing more videos for Quant. So for this first round of the starter kit, this is it. This is video number 4 of 4. I very deliberately chose the topics for these to kind of cover the bulk of what you're going to need on the test. So algebra, inequalities, absolute values, quadratics, linear equations, arithmetic, dealing with word problems, lots of word translations, ratios, percents that will also help you in general word translations. From here, the rest of the topics are less significant. So in 4 sessions, we've covered the big topics, the big themes on a really huge proportion of what you're going to see on GMAT Quant and on the Quant chunks of data insights. So this could stand alone. My real answer to your question, though, Manasvi, is, yeah, it depends on you guys. If what we kind of see in the comments and the viewership and the likes and all that kind of stuff and forum posts and all that, if you guys are saying, hey, this starter kit level stuff, we want more of it, we'll produce more of these if there's enough call for it. So if you're excited about this, again, this level of video, we've done plenty of Quant videos in the past. I'm sure we'll do more of some sort in the future. If you like the starter kit theme, you like this difficulty level and kind of this way of going about it, let us know in the comments. You can tag me at GMAT Ninja Tutoring on YouTube, at GMAT Ninja on the GMAT Club forum. Let us know what topics sound good to you. If we get enough people saying, yeah, we want more of these, then we'll do more of them at some point down the road. Again, the topics will be less central to the test. Rate work problems, for example, are 5, 6, 7, maybe 8%. Quant questions, something like that. Overlapping sets, maybe about the same. We could do probability. We could get into number properties. There are more topics, but they're less central. So TBD on whether there's more, but if you guys want to see more of these, let us know and we will do more. And Kieran, and again, as always, apologies for mispronunciations. We've already done them. We've done tons of live series on verbal. We've got reading comp, critical reasoning, many live videos for those. Data insights, we just completed a live series a few months back. So those are all up there. I think they're pretty comprehensive. And go ahead and check out the video description and you'll see all of those playlists. They're also always up on the GMAT Club channel and they are getting tossed into the chat right now. All right. Anything else here? And yeah, I hope this isn't embarrassing to you because I'm doing this because I really appreciate it. When you guys get obliterated by these questions watching live, I really appreciate this because I see a handful of people getting the right answer. And I don't know if that's I gave you an easy question or if those are the people who are watching the wrong video and shouldn't be watching Starter Kit because they're awesome. I don't think that's the case, or I saw struggles too. So I really appreciate when you guys just say, yo, what are you talking about here? I'm lost. So Rituraj, again, apologies if I mispronounced your name. Thank you. I love this kind of stuff. I'm not happy you're lost, but I love to know that you're lost if you are. Okay. This is what the tougher end of data sufficiency can feel like. Even problem solving to some degree has this feel where it's like, what am I even reading and why, right? You're going to get a lot of that on data insights where it's like, what the bleep am I reading here? Okay, last year did bakery A sell more muffins than bakery B? Fine. Nothing I can even do there. No translations. So I harp on that a lot with data sufficiency. Not much I can do here. Statement 1. Last year, more than 10% of the muffins sold by bakery B were sold in February. And at bakery A, less than 10% of the muffins they sold for the year were sold in February. I don't care about February. Why am I reading this, right? And you look at it and go, well, how do I know what happened in the other 11 months of the year? Obviously, this is not sufficient. But the feel here, which is part of why I wanted to pick on this question, is why am I reading this? But yeah, not sufficient. So A and D are out. Similar deal with statement 2 by itself. Hey, last February, A sold more than 3,500, B sold fewer than 3,500. Why am I reading this? We're still stuck in February. What happened in the rest of the year? I don't know. And it's really easy. What I saw that was really interesting on the live group is pretty much immediately from here, because you can take that idea of, hey, statement 1's about February, statement 2's about February, questions about last year. I don't care. The answer is E. And yeah, they're sometimes the answer will be E. Sometimes this just isn't enough, and maybe it's not a very hard question. That's it. You want to go a level deeper. The first wave of folks in the live group that gave us an answer gave us E, I think, kind of as a knee jerk. And then kind of as people took a little more time with it, I saw more C's. Interesting. Okay, let's think through this just a little bit. So for A, what do we know about February for A? Well, we know that in February, and I'll write that here too, just to be clear. So February for bakery A, excuse me, that's less than 10% of their total annual sales. And they sold more than 3,500 muffins from statement 2. So A sold more than 3,500. What do we know about February for bakery B? Well, we know that they sold less than 3,500. I'm just going to say 3,500 minus, I don't know how much less than 3,500, doesn't really matter. And that was more than 10% of their sales for the year. Okay, well, let's think through that a little bit. Couple ways you can handle this. One is you could just kind of look at this intuitively at this point and maybe say, wait. A sold more in February than B did. Okay, well, that doesn't tell us necessarily they sold more for the whole year, but they sold more in February, and that was a smaller proportion of their annual sales. For B, it was a higher proportion of the annual sales, and it was less muffins. So it's got to be the case that A sold more overall for the year. So you could just do that logically. If you followed that, fantastic. You're done. The answer's C. The other thing you could do here, if you're not totally sure, is you could go, well, wait a minute. If this is less than 10%, then it must be the case that I take this. So if it is 10%, then their total sales for the year, we're going to add a 0 on, right? So it's going to become more than 35,000. Since it's less than 10%, then it's got to be another reason why this would be more than 35,000. So you could kind of say conceptually, I'm going to put 2 plus marks there. One, because they already sold more than 3,500. A second one, because that total annual sales had to be more than 10 times that original 3,500. Similar process for bakery B, less than 3,500, but we're not going to multiply by 10, or we're going to have to multiply by less than 10 because that was more than 10% of their annual sales. So yeah, you could tack that 0 on, but it's got to be less than that. So there you go. A is definitely bigger than B. Answer here is C, and you are done. And yeah, love this comment. Love this comment. Now, real quick before we wrap this up, when I talk about sort of this being the feel quite a bit on data insights, Quant too, to a lesser extent, there's the kind of thing that I like to do with percents, ratios, again, to a lesser extent, is, yeah, why are you even telling me this? This doesn't matter. And the funny thing is that on a lot of the questions, yeah, it would be here, where it's just like, no, this doesn't matter. As you get into some of the other questions on data insights that have math in them, so 2-part analysis, the graphical interpretation, multi-source reasoning, you're going to have little math chunks embedded in it. And sometimes you look at a piece of information and go, why the heck are you telling me about February? It's a waste of my time. I'm going to ignore it. And you should sometimes. And sometimes you shouldn't. It's all context dependent. What I'm arguing for here is not to say that extra information always matters, but you always have to think through it the way they write the test now. Data insights and Quant both is sometimes, yeah, the answer is going to be E because this is all irrelevant, but depending on how they frame the rest of that information, I could tweak this question just a little bit and it would be E. So bottom line, keep on your toes, read carefully, go ahead and pursue that information just a little bit further and make sure that it's irrelevant before you conclude that. And yeah, I really appreciate that comment. Suprigya, I hope I'm somewhere close on that. Again, apologies if I'm not. Okay. Andrew, thank you so much for the kind words. Yet again, really appreciate this. Really appreciate all the positivity in this series. And that is it for today. And again, if you enjoyed this series, you enjoyed the first 4 in the starter kit, just let us know, tell a friend. And if there's more that you'd like to see, let us know. Happy to take suggestions and requests, and we will do our best to accommodate if there's enough people clamoring for more starter level stuff. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great time studying.